Good afternoon. My name is Chantal Brewster, and I have just a few persons here with me who were recently featured on the Rosehill Show. And I have Kailashi. Kai, come on in. How are you doing, Kai?
I am doing great. How are you?
I am great. And what do you think about the Rosehill Show?
I think the show was really great when it was on it. I think it's serving its purpose of giving those persons that don't have a voice,
Yes.
a voice, right?
Yes.
Being on that show, it was great, man.
And how was your experience then, other than great?
It was exciting, right? It was exciting. Just being in that environment, especially as an entrepreneur, in an interview, it brings things, to life. It was real. I love that for sure, right? And I think it's going to really impact network individuals as well.
And there you have Kailashi, one of our featured guests on the Rosehill Show. And Kai, if you could describe the show in one word, what would it be?
One word. I would say impactful.
Nice. Impactful.
This is Apostle Leroy Scanterbury, and I want to say what a pleasure it was to be here on the Rosehill Show with my good friend Apostle David Coulthrust and the Rosehill team. And I want you to know to call that number that's on the screen and let them know you're interested in being on the Rosehill Show. It's the place to be if you want to reach your target audience and if you want to take your life, your business to the next level.
Good afternoon. My name is Chantal Brewster, and I have just a few persons here with me who have recently been featured on the Rosehill Show. Antonia, step on in. I have here Antonia Williams. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am great. And what do you think about the Rosehill Show?
I think the Rosehill Show is a very good avenue for people to display their businesses. For example, if you are a hairdresser, it's a good avenue to have a voice and show people what you can do.
Yes. And how was your experience on the show?
I had a great experience where I was able to display my entrepreneurship skills,
Nice.
via my stepping stones, lawn maintenance, and giving people a voice on how to take care and maintain their property.
Nice. And there we have Antonia Williams, one of our featured guests on the Rosehill Show. And Antonia, if you could describe the show in one word, what would it be?
Well, one word is limited, but I would say that the show is explosive.
Explosive. Good afternoon. My name is Chantal Brewster, and I have just a few persons who were recently featured on the Rosehill Show here with me today. First is Joycelyn Wong. Joycelyn, how are you today?
I am fine, thank you. And yourself?
I am great. And what do you think about this Rosehill Show?
Well, I think the Rosehill Show is a unique tool for evangelism. That's how I see the Rosehill Show. In addition to being able to talk about your businesses, give your testimony, I do believe it's a unique tool of evangelism.
Nice. And how was your experience on the show?
I had a great experience. I was able to speak about some of the services that I offer.
So,
And yes, some of them, because there are more. So to speak about more would have taken up the whole show. So, but I did have a good experience. I was able to, like I said, I was able to speak about some of the services, and that was a good opportunity to do so.
nice. So this is Joycelyn Wong, and she was one of our featured guests on the Rosehill Show. And Joycelyn, if you could describe the show in one word, what would it be?
Unconventional.
Unconventional.
right, and welcome once again to our Rosehill Talks Politics. There are so many things that are going on in Barbados, from alleged stabbings and a whole lot of things going on amongst our children. We really got to pray for them that this would not become a trend. But the police will deal with that as they normally do in a very efficient fashion. The rain is falling occasionally. We obviously still have the situation with the South Coast Sewage Project. The sewage still given the Barbados Water Authority, the health authorities, etc., the government challenges. So there are a lot of things that are going on in Barbados right now. And recently, just today really, former finance minister and economist from Greece said that we ought to devalue our dollar. I do not know how that is going to be taken, but I certainly do not believe that we should devalue our dollar. Interesting suggestion coming from an interesting source, considering what Greece went through, but that's a different matter for a different time. I'm sure that the experts will talk about that. But this evening, we are going to be talking to Mr. Morris Lee, and I'll tell you more about him in a second. But Mr. Morris Lee, we are going to be discussing the PSV sector. So, if you've ever gotten on a minibus, or ZR, and you have had, a pleasant experience or an unpleasant experience, well, this is the show for you. I'm going to encourage you to just join us, connect, send your comments. If you have questions for Mr. Morsley, you can send those as well, and we will address those issues as much as we possibly can in this segment. So again, we're going to be talking about the PSVs, how can we make the system better. I'm going to be asking him a number of questions. I want to thank him for coming. So, we're talking about that. The ZRs, do we need to get them off the road? Do we need to control them? Are there a need for more laws? Do the laws need to be enforced? All that we're going to be talking about, but we will be back in a couple of seconds to talk to Mr. Morsley about the PSV industry in Barbados. See you soon.
Hi, my name is Roger Husbands. I want to say that the Rosehill Show is the bomb. I mean, I've enjoyed myself being on the show. It's real life, real talk. I felt like I could be myself on this show. I want to encourage all of you to subscribe to this page and ensure that you watch the Rosehill Show, because you will learn a lot of things that you never thought of. Hi, my name
P. Austin, the United Progressive Party's St. James South candidate. It was indeed a pleasure and a privilege to be a part of the Rosehill Talks Politics show. I believe that as more and more of our local influencers, practitioners in politics and other sections of society participate in the show, that it will grow from strength to strength. I want to endorse the show and encourage other persons to tune in and share the links.
Good afternoon, my name is Chantal Brewster, and I have just a few persons here with me who have recently been featured on the Rosehill Show. Antonia, step on in.
Hi.
I have here Antonia Williams. How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I am great. What do you think about the Rosehill Show?
I think the Rosehill Show is a very good avenue for people to display their businesses. For example, if you are a hairdresser, it's a good avenue to have a voice and show people what you can do.
Yes. And how was your experience on the show?
I had a great experience where I was able to display my entrepreneurship skills, via my stepping stones, lawn maintenance, and giving people a voice on how to take care and maintain their property.
Nice, and there we have Antonia Williams, one of our featured guests on the Rosehill Show. And Antonia, if you could describe the show in one word, what would it be?
Well, one word is limited, but I would say that the show is explosive.
Explosive. Good afternoon, my name is Chantal Brewster, and I have just a few persons who were recently featured on the Rosehill Show here with me today. First is Joycelyn Wong. Joycelyn, how are you today?
I am fine, thank you. And yourself?
I am great. And what do you think about this Rosehill Show?
Well, I think the Rosehill Show is a unique tool for evangelism. That's how I see the Rosehill Show. In addition to being able to talk about your businesses, give your testimony, I do believe it's a unique tool of evangelism.
Nice. And how was your experience on the show?
I had a great experience. I was able to speak about some of the services that I offer.
Some?
And yes, some of them, because there are more. So to speak about more would have taken up the whole show. So, but I did have a good experience. I was able to, like I said, I was able to speak about some of these services, and that was a good opportunity to do so.
Nice. So this is Joycelyn Wong, and she was one of our featured guests on the Rosehill Show. And Joycelyn, if you could describe the show in one word, what would it be?
Unconventional.
Unconventional.
And we have with us this evening Mr. Morsley, pastor, Christian, father, husband, married to Deborah Lee for almost 20 years.
29.
Almost 29. How has it been?
No complaints. Thankful.
You have a wonderful family.
Yes, I
you
do.
have a daughter that recently graduated as a lawyer. How was that journey for her?
Well, from birth she showed tremendous prospects. And she's been admitted to the bar for over 3 years now.
Right, wow.
And she's...
It's that long already?
It's that long. It's that long.
Wow, time flies.
Yeah, so I believe she's enjoying what she does.
Good stuff.
And then the younger daughter is preparing for 11 plus.
Already?
That is correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yes, 2 children, Ava and Azera.
Azera, correct.
So you've been preaching for over 20 years in the Pentecostal faith.
That is correct.
I remember when I first met you, you have a serious schedule. How's this year looking?
It is still as serious as it was back then.
a lot of preaching, preaching.
Yeah. I enjoy it.
Ordained for over 5 years as an apostle. How's the ministry going from that end?
It's going pretty okay. It involves ministering all over the island.
Right.
There are always several invitations to minister at churches, not just Pentecostal.
Right.
And we had a Pentecostal experience in an Anglican church for a funeral a few weeks ago.
Really?
And essentially, it was an event where we said goodbye to a sister who was part of the ministry. And we were at an Anglican church in St. Thomas for a funeral, and I was asked to deliver the sermon that evening. And I gave what I would use, for lack of a better word, a disclaimer up front to let them know that I am of the Pentecostal faith. And my topic for that evening was, when in Rome, do as Christians do. Essentially, one's behavior should not be altered depending on the environment that they're in. If you're Pentecostal, you're Pentecostal.
Right.
And that event went pretty well.
Wow.
And essentially, per year, there are usually anywhere between 75 and 100 invitations to minister.
Seriously.
Yeah, so every week I'm somewhere doing something in the community.
That is more preaching invitations than there are weeks in the year.
That is correct. So, and that does not include the Tuesday night experience that we call Home Improvement Family Ministries.
Wow, how was that going?
That's going quite well.
Wow.
Yeah, so.
But the Lord is certainly using you to make some spiritual adjustments in the nation.
Of course.
And God will continue to bless you for that. I spent over 32 years in the PSV business, and we'll talk more about that. That certainly has been a contentious industry.
Very much so.
Very, very much so. We'll talk about those things tonight. Was the general secretary and spokesperson for the Minibus Association for over 15 years.
That's correct.
And that's one of the reasons why we have you here today, because you have a wealth of experience in what has happened, what is happening, and what should happen in that industry. So we'll talk about that. And you're also the chairman of the Association of Public Transport Operators, and you're involved in real estate. Julie Dash of Hannah Properties just said, I think it was either yesterday or the day before, that the real estate industry is now down about between 45 and 50% across the nation. Is that your experience as well?
It's significantly dwindled over the last 4 or 5 years.
Right.
only yesterday evening, there is a property that is just a stone throw from where I live that was owned by a former parliamentarian who essentially no longer resides at that property. It has been vacant for a couple of months, and at one time, probably a good 5-6 years ago, we were told that that property was valued at about $5.5 million.
Okay.
And only yesterday evening, to my shock and surprise, I was told that the bank put it on the market for sale, and they accepted $900,000 for it.
What?
A huge property with 6 acres of land attached to it, and it was sold with a tremendous view.
For $900,000?
For $900,000. So, you know, what I would say is that, unfortunately, politics usually has a hand in interfering with the normal course of things in Barbados.
Right.
And that is something that we should watch very carefully, because we have to ensure that people do not use the power given to them by the public to misuse their authority. And I believe that that perhaps would have been a victim of circumstance. However, even before we go further, and I'm hoping that there are individuals in the body of Christ watching the program this evening that will be gifted in the interpretation of dreams. In the wee hours of this morning, I had a dream that essentially troubled me, where I saw the eruption of 2 large volcanoes. One in the vicinity of the west coast of Barbados, and the other one appeared to be distant from Barbados, and in my estimation, it was in somewhere in North America.
Okay.
But the magnitude of the eruption was so great that it was seen from Barbados. And, you know, should there be any person out there that could interpret, you know, what relates to that, you know, what is God saying in a dream like that? I'd be very interested in what, you know, what comes out from that. Because, you know, when you read the scriptures and you read the book of Daniel and so on, there are people in the Bible that
can interpret
obviously could interpret. Actually, if you forgot what you dreamt,
yes,
they would actually tell you what you dreamt and interpret it at the same time.
Both men of God and men of the devil did that in the book of Daniel.
It's correct.
Right.
And as I was doing my up and down during the day, I started to repeat U.S. Barbados, and in my spirit, it troubled me as to if it has something to do with the currency of this nation.
Right.
And obviously, we had the report from the governor of the central bank today, which was widely and usually anticipated at this time of the year. And I believe we ought to be in continuous prayer for our nation, which is not.
We have to watch the next 3 months. That's something that's strong in my spirit.
Very much so.
You know, the Lord has been saying some specific things to me about the next 3 months, right, in relation to what I should learn, what I should understand about the next 3 months. And I'm really committing myself to doing what I need to do for the next 3 months. As a matter of fact, I've been talking to my church about this year. And some 2 years ago, I encouraged them to start their businesses.
Correct.
And aiming towards this year. You know, this is a year of instability.
Right.
And it is also a year where we have a Kairos moment that comes around every 4 to 5 years, which is the elections.
Correct.
And I've been telling people, you know, you need to pray. You need to pray strong for this.
Very much so.
These elections. It is an election that's going to determine whether the course of Barbados for the next 50 years.
Correct.
And the right people need to be elected.
Yeah.
And I say people deliberately and not party.
Correct.
The right people need to be elected,
Yes.
whoever they are.
Yes.
And I've said openly and I've said continuously that Barbados' biggest issue for the next government is not going to be internal. is going to be facing off the winds of the international organizations and the developed countries, who, in order for them to advance, would want to see Barbados become little or nothing.
Yeah.
You know, because in order for the world to succeed and thrive, there needs to have nations that are not thriving. Cheap labor is necessary for capitalism to thrive. So, you know, and Barbados will become cheap, intelligent labor. Right now it is intelligent labor, but it's not cheap.
Right.
But if you can get this labor, this level of labor being cheap, very, very dirt cheap, you know, despite the sufferings that would be incurred, then there are nations across the world that will flood into Barbados very, 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 very quickly.
Yes.
Right, for our human capital and our
That's
intelligence. So, I mean, we really need to pray for this nation. I'm really taking this moment, and then we'll talk a bit about the public sector, the vehicles, transport. But I've been really on my Facebook using that opportunity to tell the ladies to arise, based on Judges chapter 4.
Right.
You know,
been preaching that for quite a bit for the last couple of months.
Well, there you go. It's a spirit that there's one spirit.
Yeah.
And God is telling the ladies to arise, to pray.
Yeah.
That the destiny of the nation is really in their hands.
I said that several times over the last couple of months.
But there you go.
And I made sure that in saying it, that it did not have any political overtures.
Well, this
because you can be easily misunderstood if you say that, and I said this, that Barbados deliverance is going to come through a female.
It's true.
And if you understand the scriptures where the church is really the bride of Christ,
which is a female.
I said it from that context.
Right.
But interestingly that you mentioned Judges chapter 4, because I've preached that for the last 3 months or so consistently, and there are a couple of things I picked up. I usually use a couple of verses from Judges chapter 5,
right,
which really is the psalm or the song of prophetess Deborah.
Right.
But Judges chapter 4 is the story. So oftentimes when you mention the song, there's always a story connected to the song.
Correct.
One of the things that grabbed my interest is that the very first verse of Judges 4 indicated that when Ehud died, Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. Meaning that we have to ensure that the leadership of this nation and the leadership of the church has to be led by individuals who can operate without supervision.
It is correct.
That's one of the first things. Then when you look at the fact that Barak was the general in charge, and then Sisera was also the general in charge of the adversarial force, Prophetess Deborah spoke prophetically to him, and she prophesied victory for the nation through him. But when wartime came, essentially, he said something that was very interesting. He told Deborah, if you're not going to war with me, I'm not going.
Correct.
If you stay, I'm going to stay back here with you. But when you come down close to the end of chapter 4, you would recognize that there's a quiet warrior, unnoticed, sitting at home called Jael. And as the story developed, and the leader of the adversary ended up right in her tent.
Correct.
And you know, the rest is history. He wanted water, she gave him milk, he went off to sleep, and she had the requisite artillery that was necessary to eliminate him from the story. And what I find interesting about that is that after she eliminated him, the nation had peace for 40 years.
It is true.
So in the context of Barbados, 8 elections of peace.
Yeah, it is possible.
So it was possible then, and it's possible now. But we go back to 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people, which are called by my name, if they will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I'll hear from heaven. I'll forgive the sin and I'll heal the land. And we know that Barbados is in dire need of economic healing.
I think one of the things that has happened, and it's interesting that the conversation is going on this line, but I think one of the interesting things that happened is that the forces who have directed this nation for years, right? And the Lord has taken his hands off. And we know that there's certain individuals who, have no regard for God or regard for church.
Correct.
Right? By the things they wear. They've influenced the direction of this nation in one way or the other.
Correct.
And it's interesting that we've come to a point over the last couple of years that whatever advice they've given before is not working.
Correct.
And it is, for me, a pivotal point for people to understand whatever you've referred to before, wherever you've gone, whatever meetings you've gone to, whatever people you've consulted,
Right.
if they had the answer, Barbados would not be here.
That is correct.
And results don't lie. If they had the answer, Barbados would not be at this point.
I would even interject by saying that the answers are there, but there's a spirit of suppression that ensures that the answers are locked away and not used, because what has happened over the years, particularly in public transport, is the absence of proper consultation, where the political community usually talks at us but don't talk to us. And I think that has essentially come home to roost in terms of the problems that the industry
now
is
that you're
facing.
talking about that, can you give me an overview? Let's talk about the public transport system. Can you give me an overview as to where it is right now?
I would first respond to that by commending the owners of the PSVs for recognizing the importance of transport to Barbados.
Right.
Because essentially, transport is like blood to the human body. And as we speak, there are about 750 privately owned public service vehicles in Barbados. That's made up of about 400 ZRs, what we call route taxis,
Okay, 400 ZRs.
and about 350 minibuses.
Right, okay.
Now, unfortunately, our brothers and sisters at the Transport Board only have about 60 buses at their disposal.
60.
Yeah, we transport in excess of 80% of the traveling public.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious
80%.
at this juncture. And you would recognize that a few days ago, a leading union in Barbados carried out strike action for 48 hours. It did not have the desired impact.
Right.
If these 750 PSVs are owned by about 550 entrepreneurs, because some operators operate more than one unit.
Right.
And if those 500 plus entrepreneurs sat in a room on a night like this and said, we are going to instruct our drivers not to move those vehicles tomorrow, Barbados would grind to a halt, right? So I want to commend them, because I cannot think of another group that's more patriotic than them, who essentially are asked to do a lot with a little. And that's where we stand. There is the playing field, for the lack of a better word, when it comes to transport. The unevenness of this playing field cannot go unnoticed when you sit down and analyze what is happening within the industry. And it saddens me that successive governments are guilty of being made aware of what is needed to take the country forward in terms of public transport. But the industry is plagued by an attempt to empower a few people with the resources that can be drawn from this industry, while those that put in the labor and the hard work essentially get very little or nothing for all of their effort.
Wow.
And it concerns me. I mean, like Israel going around the mountain on several occasions over a 40-year period. I've been sending almost the same proposal to government for in excess of 20 years.
Could you, are you at liberty to tell us some of the components of that proposal?
I'm sure. I'd be more than happy to do that. Now, in explaining the contents of those proposals, it is done in the context of where the industry is. you would recognize that public transport is more than just a ZR or minibus. Public transport involves transport board buses,
Right.
limousines, all people movers. Transport board buses, limousines, taxis, maxi taxis, tour coaches, minibuses, and route taxis. 7 categories of people movers. When I first got into the business a little over 30 years ago, I was told that there were 276,000 people in Barbados. Over the last 30 years, that number has remained consistent. At that time, there were 65,000 cars on the road. Fast forward 30 years, you have the same population, but the amount of cars on the road has gone from 65,000 to close to 140 plus thousand cars.
Correct.
So essentially, when you could drive from just on the outside of the garrison going to Oistins in less than 20 minutes, that journey now at peak time takes you over an hour.
It is correct.
So what that has said to all of us is that in terms of public transport, every car that has come out, those 90,000 additional cars, on average has taken per car about 3 individuals per car out of the system. So when you multiply 90,000 by 3, right, that's 270,000. To and fro, that's 540,000 bus fares per day at $2. $1 million has been taken out of public transport. Successive governments, in an attempt to buffer the cost of doing business where transport is concerned, have thought it wise, and for reasons best known to them, to subsidize an entity called the Transport Board. If you had to calculate or quantify the amount of subsidy that has gone into public transport over the last 20 years, it is in excess of $1 billion Barbados dollars.
Yes. Wow.
Now,
$1 billion Barbados.
what would happen if Barbados had $500 million in foreign reserves today? In other words, I draw that rationale to show you that public transport could have, if properly planned, would have saved this country of the 20 devaluations that we had. Because if we had 500...
20 downgrades.
Downgrades,
Right.
sorry. Downgrades, sorry.
That's okay.
If we had that 500 million US dollars to add to what the central bank governor disclosed to us today, our foreign reserves would have been in a much stronger position today than it is
Just
now.
by one sector.
Just by
regulating
one
sector.
sector. So I would go on to say that there is a level of ignorance relating to the sector that concerns me, because people make comments about the industry without really knowing what is going on within the industry. You have a situation where, I just explained to you, there are 7 types of people movers in Barbados. And as at today's date, 5 of those get duty-free concessions. Transport board buses, taxis, maxi taxis, limousines, and tour coaches. The only 2 that don't get any duty-free concession for the importation of buses is the ZR and the minibus.
Why do you think that is?
It is as a result of a demonic policy that gone all the way back to Carrie Fester in 1981.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is that there was a small niche of operators that were called to transport the artistes that were on the island in Carrie Fester. The government was unable to transport them because of the lack of resources that they had in terms of vehicles. And this small complement of the greater complement that transported the people when payment time came. An offer was made by the government at the time. The operators indicated to government, our daily takings exceed more than what you're offering us. And we don't think that the offer that you put on the table is reasonable. The leadership at the time indicated, well, if they don't think that the offer is reasonable, pay them what they think is reasonable. The payment went, the payment was received, and in the following budget, they were hit with a punitive tax from way back then till now. And part of that punitive behavior has essentially disqualified the operators of these buses from getting what they should rightfully get in terms of duty-free concessions, because right now as we speak, there are some of the yellow minibuses on the road that are 40 years of age.
Well, Mr. Morrissey, we're going to come right back. We're going to some commercials, and we're going to talk more about this, because you're beginning to open up our eyes as to why things are the way they are.
I'm trying my best to do that.
In the public service and transport sector. Yeah. Okay, so we will be right back after these few messages.
Correct.
Husbands, I want to say that the Rosehill Show is the bomb. I mean, I've enjoyed myself being on the show. It's real life, real talk. I felt like being myself on this show. I want to encourage all of you to subscribe to this page and ensure that you watch the Rosehill Show, because you will learn a lot of things that you never thought of. Hi, my name is Roger.
Austin, the United Progressive Party's St. James South candidate. It was indeed a pleasure and a privilege to be a part of the Rosehill Talks Politics show. I believe that as more and more of our local influencers, practitioners in politics and other sections of society participate in the show, that it will grow from strength to strength. I want to endorse the show and encourage other persons to tune in and share the latest.
Good afternoon, my name is Chantal Brewster, and I have just a few persons here with me who have recently been featured on the Rosehill Show. Antonio, step on in. I have here Antonio Williams. How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I am great. What do you think about the Rosehill Show?
I think the Rosehill Show is a very good avenue for people to display their businesses. For example, if you are a hairdresser, it's a good avenue to have a voice and show people what you can do.
Yes, yes. And how was your experience on the show?
I had a great experience where I was able to display my entrepreneurship skills via my stepping stones, lawn maintenance, and giving people a voice on how to take care and maintain their property.
Nice. And there we have Antonia Williams, one of our featured guests on the Rosehill Show. And Antonia, if you could describe the show in one word, what would it be?
One word is limited, but I would say that the show is explosive.
Explosive.
Well, we are back. We are sitting here with Mr. Morsley, the chairman of the Association of Public Transport Operators, and we've certainly been getting some interesting information about this sector, knowing that now there are 7 principal ways that people are transported in Barbados. That's what you said, and 5 of those ways, people who own those vehicles are afforded duty-free concessions. The only 2 that are not afforded duty-free concessions are ZRs and minibuses, and we were talking about the history of that. But I want to ask a question here. Do you think that the industry should have a regulatory body of its own? I mean, there is the Ministry of Transport and Works, but you're not saying, we're not dealing with an industry that in and of itself transports 80% of the public that ride on public service vehicles, 80%. And if it is that high, I'm wondering, should it have its own regulatory body to deal with the complaints, to deal with the issues, to deal with maybe bad behavior, and really set a vision for the particular sector and try to guide the government as to how it can improve that particular sector?
There is a need for a revised regulatory body to manage the affairs of public transport in Barbados. An attempt was made with the formation of what is referred to as the Transport Authority, which is an institution that had taken over from the Barbados Licensing Authority, or the Ministry of Transport and Works.
Right.
It is still operating within the ambit of the Ministry of Transport. One of the major problems that exists is that those in authority have not seen the need to have any person on the board of the Transport Authority from the private sector guys.
Well, that's really what I am talking about, because I am aware that the government does have a regulatory body in place.
Yes, they do.
But I am talking about a regulatory body specifically for the private service vehicles.
Right. We made representation on several occasions to ask those in authority to ensure that that body would have individuals from this sector to be able to lend a voice to making things better. But it essentially was rejected.
Why do you think that is?
The initial
statistic is that you are transporting 80%
exactly
of the traveling public. The public travels on public service vehicles.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Well, there's a school of thought amongst them that there may be decisions that will have to be made that might affect the industry one way or another, and for reasons that best known to them, they think that those decisions should be made in the absence of people that participate in moving the majority of the traffic public. I have a serious difficulty with it. The initial board of the Transport Authority included representation from the Minibus Association, which was we sent forward the president at the time, Mr. Dennis Tull, who's essentially a household name in public transport, and I would even use this forum to respectfully suggest that with the construction going on at the River Minibus or PSV terminal, I believe that that terminal should be named after him.
That's reasonable.
Because he put in a good 40 years without any kind of remuneration into transport.
For sure.
And I think, I could not think of a better person. I believe it should be called the Dennis Tull PSV Concourse, right? But in its present state now, it's called the Constitution Terminal. And I don't like the name Constitution because the Constitution of Barbados has been manipulated to unfair the players within the sector like us. So I really, that name don't give me a lot of comfort. but essentially, in terms of a regulatory body, regulation is designed to bring order where chaos has the potential to erupt.
Yes.
And in almost every sector, there is a regulatory body. You have a regulatory body in tourism, there's regulatory bodies in agriculture, and they're all set up by the government, whose responsibility is to govern and manage the affairs of the country. So I have a difficulty with that. What I have a difficulty with is the absence of participation on that regulatory body by individuals that eat, sleep, and drink public transport every day. And you have people, the police are on that board, people from MTW, people from the transport board on the board. And they're moving 20% of the nation. And we're moving 80%, and there is no room for an operator. And there are several individuals within the sector who are much more articulate than I am in putting forward a case for the industry, and yet there seems to be no
room in the inn.
No room in the inn, you know.
Well, let's talk a bit frank. There are far too many negative stories.
Very much so.
About the ZRs and the minibus.
Correct.
I don't believe that it is the majority. I don't believe that is the majority of the 750 drivers.
Neither do I.
But as usual, for whatever reason, the bad apples tend to stand to the front of the bunch.
Spoil the whole bunch.
Spoil the whole bunch. So that once again is why I was talking about a regulatory body to really administer justice to those persons who are the bad apples. I know that there is a justice system, but I'm wondering if there's room for policing yourself.
There is room, I believe. Actually, we have made recommendations to government to empower us to govern ourselves.
Okay.
The legal fraternity they have their own institution. They can suspend a lawyer from practice without having to go to the Attorney General. So they have been empowered under the Constitution as a responsible agency to self-govern the activities within the entities in which they work. We ask government to allow us that same platform, and we have not gotten any response to that request. I'm saying that I see a platform where every owner and every operator, driver, conductor, should be made to join the association and pay the requisite fees and so on, but it would open the door to give some teeth to the activities that you see out there that cause everybody concern. In other words, we should have our own internal regulatory body that when you see hear the public making complaints about the behavior of people within the system, that kind of behavior should be called to order, and we should be able to self-govern and impose any sanctions that we deem necessary to bring some kind of order to what is going on.
That brings me to my next question about the demerit system. I know that this is something that is in developed countries, some developed countries. So is there room in your thinking for a demerit system that would see, well, after several convictions or infractions, you will lose your license? Do you think there's a place for that?
There is a place. Actually, we supported the demerit system from probably over 15 years ago when it was discussed. Actually, for the last 20 years, I have been lending support to breathalyzer testing, because you hear of complaints where a PSV driver is seen jumping out of a bus and going to a rum shop and going down the road, drinking a beer and manning a bus, or perhaps drinking alcohol during his lunchtime or whatever the case is. And I have called for breathalyzer testing, but the breathalyzer testing that I call for should not be restricted to just PSV drivers manning vehicles on the road. It should be broad-based, because obviously, based on the amount of accidents that you see,
people are drunk. That's clear.
People just drunk under the influence. So one of the greater concerns that you have about regulation and laws and things to bring the industry in order essentially is the implementation or who will guard the guards. Because if truth be told, you will recognize that there's a cadre of individuals within the industry that own buses that people don't know who the true owners are.
Okay.
Because essentially, based on information that has been shared with me, there are individuals that own some of these buses. You will never get to know that they own them because they have people fronting for them. And essentially, some of the people that are supposed to man the system, it seems as though some of them are also owners. So then you find this uneven.
A conflict of interest.
A conflict of interest where people could get away with certain things and other people at the wink we've heard over the last 20 years this question asked: why would some person that has 200 convictions be still allowed to drive a PSV? Now, what it would educate the public is by saying to them that they need to ask themselves, what's a conviction? Because there are different levels of conviction. If you drive a PSV that is dirty, you could get report for driving a dirty ZR that want washing.
Right.
If you drive a ZR or a minibus that the extinguisher ain't working, that's another conviction. If you drive a ZR and the mirror or the windscreen is cracked, that's a conviction. If you drive a ZR that you left the tire at the spare tire at the tire shop getting repaired, that's another report. So you drive, and they normally will have a badge. You know, the PSV operator will have a badge. There are operators that get report for not having the badge on. There are operators that get report that the badge turned the other way and you can't see it. You understand? And so what I'm saying is that I would like to respectfully suggest that the demerit system be put in place and there be proper enforcement, but it should be done on a platform where all of those previous, there should be an amnesty. Wipe the slate clean. Let everybody start at zero. Because essentially, you have former PSV drivers that drive transport board buses who stopped getting a report from the time they started drive at the transport board. Because obviously, the transport board is seen as a government entity, and a blind eye is often turned to overloading on those PSVs, which is something that I will share with you that will blow your mind in terms of the makeup of the carrying capacity of these minibuses.
Well, tell us.
In Barbados, under the road traffic regulation, there's a clause that deals with the definition of a minibus. And the definition of a minibus is a vehicle equipped to carry a minimum of 14 passengers and a maximum of 34, and the sentence continues 24 sitting, 10 standing.
Right.
Good. You have a minimum of 3 types of minibuses. You have a 24-seater, you have a 28-seater, and you have a 37-seater. Those bigger minibuses were former coaches
Right.
that the guys bought because they did not have access to duty-free concession, which stands at 97.4%. If I bring this bus in the port today and it costs $100,000, 50,000 US, I gotta pay the government $97,400 to get that bus out the port. And when it come out the port and ready for work, I can only collect $2 in bus fare from the commuter. If a tire go up tomorrow, diesel go up tomorrow, parts go up tomorrow,
It doesn't change.
unlike other businesses that pass on the additional imposition of tax, I am burdened or bound with this legal $2, while I am competing with the transport board that gets $9 for bus fare per passenger. While the commuter puts $2 in the fare box, the government comes along and puts $7 in it to make up the $9. Because the cost of the transport board to move a commuter from point A to point B is $9 Barbados. The commuter, because the majority of people that catch public transport come from the lower income bracket. So whenever the issue of bus fare increase is discussed, the government start to get coached, because essentially they get nervous because they know that the increased bus fare has a political connotation, implication to it. So therefore, the private sector to which we belong has essentially been subsidizing the cost of transport by paying high duties If you buy a tire, you pay a VAT. If you buy diesel, you pay a VAT. It's the cost plus VAT. You get your invoice. Do you know that a lot of people don't know that we were zero rated where VAT was concerned? In other words, we pay a VAT, but we can't get back. And that's been going on from the time VAT started now. Right?
Sounds like the church.
And I'm saying, I'm saying, you know, when the central bank issues statistics about the different sectors in Barbados, the privately owned PSVs contribute $248 million in economic activity to the gross domestic product of Barbados. The sector employs close to 7,000 people, both directly and indirectly. And essentially,
and still don't have a voice in the shaping of the sector.
Ain't got a voice in nothing.
80% of the traveling public, you transport. 240 million.
248. Just like Central Bank.
Million. I don't want to rob you of 8 million.
Yes.
248 million annually.
Yeah.
Contributing to the gross domestic product.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And no voice.
No voice.
How is that possible?
6,700 employees, directly and indirectly.
And no voice.
And no voice. And there are people.
Transport Board has 60 buses.
Yeah.
Collectively, you have 750.
Correct.
And you know, ZRs and minibuses.
Correct.
Okay? And still no voice.
They get duty free.
They get duty free, you get none. They get subsidized.
They employ 1/10 of the amount of people that we employ. And they get, the last budget, they got $40 million in subsidy for the little bit of buses that they had. When I worked out the figure, after they collect all the buses that they collect, and you divide the subsidy by the buses, and I was generous, I used 100 buses, I didn't even use 60. $333,333.33 per bus in subsidy after you collect the bus fare you collect. How much of that is? And we ain't got no voice. So I'm saying something, it is economic disenfranchisement at its best.
Should the entire public service, public transport be privatized?
I don't support full privatization, but I support semi-privatization.
Explain.
I believe that we as a nation should ensure at all times that we transport the physically challenged, the senior citizens, and the school children. A proper demand and supply survey should be carried out to quantify what is that community. And then it should be determined how many buses would you need to move those 3 sets of individuals. And that should be the cutoff point. A lot of people are unaware that the University of the West Indies has a system, and it's something that I put on the table about 10 years ago and it was scoffed at. They have a number of minibuses that move the students from Province Street to the university, from Lower Broad Street to the university. In other words, all the UE students that need public transport just wait in town, and a minibus from UE will come and pick you up and take you to UE free of cost.
Right.
But the cost of running that operation is quietly blended within the fees and subventions that are paid to UE.
Which is reasonable. Somebody has to pay for it.
Commuters in Barbados shouldn't pay a bus fare. They should use the UE model, where the taxes that are paid into the economy finance transport in Barbados. What that would do, the owners would have a contractual arrangement to provide transport from 5 a.m. to midnight on the routes that they are working on. And they will be paid for doing that.
And that is put within the taxes of the nation.
Of the nation. What that would do, If a fellow know that he is driving under a contractual arrangement, he has no need to hustle. If he has no need to hustle, he uses less fuel. If he uses less fuel, the U.S. money that we send overseas to pay for it going to come down. He uses less parts. You reduce your U.S. there again, your foreign exchange. Then there are less emissions. So you're using less drugs for respiratory illnesses. So you're taking a burden off of the Ministry of Health as well. And I put that on the table, and people want to know if Minister Lee was a resident of Mars or Pluto or one of them planets.
So you're telling me that, because this is radical beyond radical.
But that's what we need in Barbados.
Right. So David Thompson, former Prime Minister, the Honorable David Thompson, introduced free bus fares for these schools.
Correct.
School children.
Yeah.
And that is causing a burden on the transport board, so it is said.
So it is said.
Right? But you're now suggesting that all public transport should be free of cost to the commuters at the point of the delivery of the service.
Correct.
But take the money out of the taxpayers' money.
In other words,
are we already overtaxed?
But we spread the tax across the economy, because essentially the people that would operate the vehicles, they spend money, so they pay taxes. They buy food, they buy clothes, they live somewhere, etc. So the money that the operators receive is still plowed back into economic activity, which is plowed back into job creation. You understand? And once an economy has a very robust level of economic activity, then you see growth, then you see economic opportunities. But as I said, that is, I don't think the nation was mature enough to get into a debate about that.
I mean, we're gonna take a break in a couple of minutes and come back for the final segment of our show. But because I want to explore this some more.
Yeah.
But what kind of remuneration would you give to an individual? How do you see that working out? A guy, makes $500 per day, because you're talking about fixed contract.
Yeah.
A guy makes $500 a day. He's making probably, if he works every day, about $15,000 a month. Do you see the contract from the government being that much?
Well, in order to quantify what would be considered reasonable, is that you look at what the transport board currently charge the nation for moving a person.
Okay.
Which is $9. You look at the disenfranchised $2 bill that the PSVs get, and you find some kind of medium between there.
All right, so if we add 2 and 9, we get 11. We divide that by 2, we get $5.50.
Because essentially, I think that to move people at $5 per person is not unreasonable. Right. But I have divorced or abandoned the idea of the free transportation because the nation demonstrated that they're not mature enough to discuss it, although it works successfully at UE.
Well, I don't want to.
I want to address.
Hold on, before you do UE, right? Before you do UE, because on this program I don't play devil's advocate. I try to get other ideas out.
Yeah.
There is a model that predates UE, though.
Right.
And that is the transporting of every person for several years, transporting of every person free of cost beyond the age of 65.
Correct.
So that has happened.
And has worked.
And it's worked. And the transporting of every person below, I don't remember the age, but if a baby gets on, they don't pay.
Yeah.
So that has happened. So you're
and a physically challenged person.
A physically challenged person. So you're just talking about expanding that.
Exactly. People don't make no fuss about that. But then when it comes to taking the model and enhancing it using the UE model to embrace the whole sector that needs public transport, then it's you and dance and cry about it.
Well, we're gonna take a break, and then we can come back and close, and we'll have 10 more minutes in the program to discuss it.
That's fine. That's fine.
We're gonna talk about this because I think it's a good note to end on, and then I just want to spend a little time talking about your vision for transport. So we'll be right back in a couple of seconds. We'll take a few advertisements, and then we're talking to Mr. Morris Lee about transportation in Barbados. We'll be right back.
I want to say that the Rosehill Show is the bomb. I mean, I've enjoyed myself being on the show. It's real life, real talk. I felt like I could be myself on this show. I want to encourage all of you to subscribe to this page and ensure that you watch the Rosehill Show because you will learn a lot of things that you never thought of. Hi, my name is Roger.
This is Apostle Leroy Scanterbury, and I want to say what a pleasure it was to be here on the Rosehill Show with my good friend Apostle David Coulthrust and the Rosehill team. And I want you to know to call that number that's on the screen and let them know you're interested in being on the Rosehill Show. It's the place to be if you want to reach your target audience and if you want to take your life, your business to the next level. This is Apostle.
Talking to Mr. Morris Lee, and we certainly are having an interesting discussion. He's the chairman of the Association of Public Transport Operators, and he was just articulating the vision for free transport. And I like using the UE model, spreading the burden across the board, and then everyone could travel free. I'm sure if there was reliable transport, a lot of people would put down their cars. It is true, and just travel. But as we have entered the final segment of our show off here, we were talking a bit about your vision for the entire sector.
Yes.
So let's talk about that.
Okay. Are you ready to receive this?
I am. I believe I'm ready to receive it. And the many people who are there are people here who are saying this is very informative and enlightening. So I want to thank you for and some people are here saying that what you're saying is making sense. So let's talk a bit.
Okay. This vision and these concepts come to the Rosehill free of cost.
Oh, well, hey.
There are no royalties for the Rosehill, but should any vision be embraced, I will hope that royalties be paid by the implementers.
Why not? They should be.
As we speak, I'd explain that the transport board gets $9 for moving a commuter. Right. We get $2 because they get a subsidy of $7. I took the liberty of bringing along a download, a Google Earth download, to share my vision for transport as it relates to where we are now. Public transport, as it stands, the PSV sector moves a little over 80% of the commuters. Yeah. I would like to essentially make a pledge publicly to ask those in authority to again consider offering duty-free concessions, because by giving the sector these 750 PSV vehicles the opportunity to buy new vehicles free of duties, essentially a new vehicle uses a lot less parts. That's foreign exchange. A lot less fuel. That's foreign exchange. A lot less emissions, which would reduce the cost to the Ministry of Health for medication and so on. There'll be a lot less quieter.
That's correct.
And therefore, it will create an environment which is something that is long overdue. Now, I believe that a reasonable bus fare for the private sector should be $5.
Okay.
And there is room, if we are forward thinking in the way we conduct business. Bus fare could come to the owners of these public service vehicles at a rate of $5 per commuter, $5 per commuter, without the commuter paying a cent more than the $2 that they pay now.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Good. You have in Barbados 2 major hubs of collection of passengers in Bridgetown. You have the Cheapside Terminal.
Correct.
And you have the River Terminal. Those 2 terminals span a significant amount of real estate, square footage. My proposal to finance this extra $3 that the operator should get, it is going to be free of cost to the government. When I Google Earth the terminals, I trust that the cameraman could pick up this.
Can we pick this up? Get this on camera.
This is a Google Earth print.
Okay, you have it upside down. Just yes.
Yes, sorry. There's a Google Earth print of the River Terminal.
Are we getting this?
Are you getting this?
Yeah, you getting it? Okay, right, we're getting it.
It will show you exactly where the River Terminal
keep it to the camera.
Is located. I believe that we also have a Google Earth copy of the Cheapside Terminal.
Right.
Now, once you measure these 2 pieces of real estate, they amount to significant levels of square footage. My proposal is to construct and cover these 2 terminals with a huge steel shed. Put solar panels on top of these sheds.
Right.
Sell the electricity that you generate to the light and power that you will get free from our Father every day. And the revenue that you get from the light and power for selling current to the grid, compare that $3. I mean, you see, you join the community of laughing people.
No. I laugh because it makes sense.
It's revolutionary. It is 40 years behind time. Why would we ignore a resource that is coming to our country every day that we could use to subsidize the cost of transport in Barbados? I have put it on the table, and yet I have found that unless an idea come from the right person with the right color, with the right amount of degrees and accent behind it, it don't get noticed. But the average fellow that don't get a chance to sit on the board could sit down home in front of the computer and pull up this. And I'm saying that we have a golden opportunity. I would like to see those 2 terminals look like Sheraton Center. State of the art. People could come, if you have parents that finishing work at 5 o'clock and children that coming off at 3, they could go in the bus stand and go into an internet cafe and do the homework.
Yes.
Do the research, so that by the time mommy come to join them, homework done.
But then you also get additional revenue because if you're renting spaces.
But of course, please.
It's our bus terminals are amazing, particularly the one down Cheapside.
Yeah.
Right. You better not get any rain.
Exactly.
You better.
They're just parking spaces. They're not terminals.
Yeah. You better not get any rain.
So I'm saying, apart from that, my vision for transport, I'm sharing this with you. Just on the outskirts of where your sanctuary is, there's the roundabout there by One Accord. If you go a little towards the east of that roundabout, you will find yourself in a gully that if you walk through it, you're going to end up down by the River Terminal in Bridgetown.
Really?
Correct. It goes under the highway. When you make a left turn at Warren's roundabout, you actually drive over a bridge. A lot of people don't know a bridge there.
Yes, that's correct.
If you walk under that bridge and go right away down, you're going to end up right past the Globe Cinema and right into Fairchurch Street bus stand. Why not push down some trees in that area and build a car park and encourage people to park the cars there and use a monorail to go underneath the road, underneath the trees, out of everybody way, in town within a few seconds. And the same big car park that you built, put some solar panels upon it, because you're going to use electric monorail trains to carry the people down the road quietly without any emissions and bring them back up the road when they're done shop or go school or go work.
From Warrens to Bridgetown in a couple of seconds.
Underneath the road, and a green environment with a cup of coffee and reading a magazine and watching a little movie and so on. People pay $10 for that, although they might get it for $2. So I'm saying that transport needs revolutionizing. In addition to that, get the hovercraft and put people to park at Oystins and sail them down the road like Jolly Roger up in the morning and let it get off by the careenage.
But there was a talk sometime back.
Talk, that's all it has been, talk.
About ferries, and I don't know where it went.
So I'm saying that Barbados needs a ferry system that will bring people from Spikestown to Halltown to Bridgetown, Oystins to the careenage. In addition to that, because the PSVs have been essentially disenfranchised by Candy's people cheap all these years, I want to suggest a barter exchange where if you're building desalination plants, let the association run one of them, and the profit that desalination plant make, give that to the operators to subsidize Candy people cheap. So we are just pregnant with ideas, but nobody to listen. Public transport can be a major revenue earner and enfranchiser of small business people in Barbados in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. We should not sit back like if we got handcuffs on our hand and see BNTCL get sell, Hilton get sell, all these different state-owned assets, the government, the family silver get disposed, and we never had the opportunity to step up to the plate and say, listen, we buy the Hilton, keep it in local hands. We buy the BNTCL, keep it in local hands. Because if you're making the money, if you're making a little bit of profit, how can you aspire to come and put $100 million US on the table?
Maybe that's the intention.
You get what I'm saying? So we need to move away from empowering a few and spreading the net a little wider. And it is doable, it is economically feasible, as long as the right ear is given, and not just to hear, but to implement. Because delayed obedience is disobedience.
That vision is amazing.
And I believe that it came from God. I don't take no credit for it.
Amen. Well, we are out of time.
Amen.
And as you said before,
time well spent, I would hope.
It was, and as you said before, the things that I sent to you, the questions I sent to you, we could spend about 3 hours just discussing.
You could only scratch the surface with that, sir. Please, thank you.
We will have you back here. The chairman of the Association of Public Transport Operators was here, the former general secretary and spokesperson for the Minibus Association for over 15 years, articulating an amazing vision. I think I'm going to go home tonight and sleep on this monorail concept. I believe that there should be a monorail coming from Mile Quarter and going way up to 6 Roads right across the highway. But that one through the gully, that is just amazing.
When we come back to talk again, I put a monorail project on the table of government about 20 years ago as a tourism project for the country, carrying people through Turnersaw Woods. You have trees in Turnersaw Woods that's 500 years old. And you don't have to disfigure the woods, put electric monorail through there, and put a hub just outside the Turnersaw plantation. People could come and they could have a Hyatt in St. Andrew, because there are peaks in St. Andrew. You could see St. John, St. Joseph, St. Peter, St. Andrew, St. Thomas, and let the people enjoy a good view, get on the monorail, do a nature trail quietly, come back and enjoy themselves, and the tourism figures will go through the roof. The best is yet to come, you know. once you get leadership that is prepared to sit down and listen. I rest my case, sir.
Amen.
Amen to that.
Well, thank you once again.
Thanks for having me.
Mr. Morris Lee.
Thanks for having me.
You know, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Those of viewership, selling the electricity using photovoltaic cells is excellent. Works for Williams Industries, and I believe your idea is actually utilized in parts of Europe and in Canada. We've had a number of people watching. Individual here saying Mr. Lee is the modern day Joseph.
Oh,
he
Jesus.
needs an audience with Farah. Duty-free concessions on new PSV vehicles makes sense. All right? Selling everything, it just makes sense.
And mind you, Apostle,
some person says school is in session.
we never even touched on electric buses. We spent $43 million in diesel when a year come. And if the fellas get duty-free and get the permission to bring in duty-free electric buses, do the math.
Yes.
The minister was smart when delivering a budget, because you know he have to look for a lot less US money to pay them loans outside.
Well, my producer is telling me my time is up.
My time is up too.
Well, thank you for joining us here at the Rosehill Show. Certainly an interesting discussion from the beginning to the end. I want to encourage you to just like our page, the Rosehill channel, and just look out for us during the political season. We have something amazing coming for you to follow the entire elections process from the beginning to the end, so join us then. But until then, keep praying for Barbados, keep praying for Barbados women. Arise and pray for this nation. Until next Wednesday, when we have some fresh and exciting guests, it's good night from the Rosehill Talks Politics Show. God bless you. Thanks for joining us.